how do you think about racism today? Racism today. I say racism like change. It's not as like strong how it used to be in like the 20s, the 40s.
We tell ourselves that certain people, that a select few black people and a select few, Indians and Asians and Latinos are okay because they're quote white enough.
So what if there was white slaves and there's a black guy named Willie Lynch and then he just came out of nowhere and made up a directional book like, oh, this is how you treat your white slaves when they do this and that. Like,
one time when I was like 4 or 5, this idea of racism was just thrown in my face, and I realized that I had no way to talk about it.
I think that's the hardest part, like having to like dig in like deep and finding all of these things that you want to talk about and address, and at the end of the day, it's still gonna exist.
Because if you're just like a white person, like you don't really feel the oppression. And I think that's why it's harder for a white person to talk about racism, is because before you can talk about it, you have to get it. But a black person, they know, or a person of color, they know. Like they realize it's institutionalized.
I work at a health center that is licensed under the Brigham in Boston and Jamaica Plain. And I think that's important to say because I manage all of our community-based programming over here. And the Racial Healing and Reconciliation Project I see as one of the most important health programs that I do at the health center.
As a person of color, I have sort of like different perspectives to bring up, sort of because I live in sort of like this, I call it the triangle. And I feel there's I have the stresses of being a person of color, and I have the stresses of going to a school in the suburbs, but living my reality in an urban inner city setting. And so I have those stresses, but on top of that, I have the language barrier, so my mom can't really communicate with anyone from that suburban school.
The way that we visioned the project was that we were going to try and impact health by understanding and really undoing racism.
Before, when I thought about racism, I thought about it more as like an interpersonal problem. I didn't really understand it systemically. Especially for myself, I just thought, I'm not racist.
When I would talk about racial issues, I would get really defensive about being white and about where I came from and like how I was involved in racism. And through the project, I saw that I was able to open my eyes to a different perspective.
To do that, we felt like we really needed to have youth that identified as white and youth of color doing the work together.
The hardest thing to me is basically saying your feelings and stuff like that, because there really can be some difficult stuff that you can encounter which will make you want to cry.
When I first started doing this work, I really tried to numb myself from the pain, I guess. I did not want to feel anything. And for some reason, this really, really touched me, and I was just heartbroken, like, oh my God, and I felt so sad, but I also was like, yes, finally, I can relate to what people are talking about. I'm really hurting, Doing this work has definitely just changed the way I think about everything.
I can tell you racism is not an easy thing to live with. Racism is not an easy thing to talk about. But I feel that if we can just begin to have this dialogue in a much greater way, change will come. That change for me happens on the individual level, the interpersonal level, and on the institutional level.
The challenging part has been trying to help the rest of the world understand how important this is. The young people were so ready and open to doing this work. It's been truly beautiful to watch them, how accepting they are of this, how ready they are to learn this stuff, how non-judgmental they are of each other, how supportive they are of each other.
I feel like racial healing is the only place where I can really talk about this. And when I try to bring it to other people,
I believe young people are the ones that will finally get that message across this nation.
If every single person was to look at racism or learn the history like we have in this group, it just makes everybody more aware, and then they go back out and they start to change, and little by little, this institution will just crumble.
Yeah, I want people to know that change could come. Working on racism